Thank you. I love the syncopation. The syncopation. That was nice. Thank you. Ooh. So last week we started our series on the book, right? Which was The Zen of Oz by Joey Green. And at the end of our talk last week, we discovered a few things. First, Glinda could have told Dorothy that she had the power to return home on her own to Kansas. But what do we know? She wouldn't have believed her, right? And that realization mirrors our own journeys, doesn't it? You know, people could tell us, you're fabulous, you're wonderful, you're magnificent, look at your gifts. And until we own it, until we know that is our truth, we walk around in a daze, waiting for somebody to save us. The second discovery was that no matter what happens, we must keep our ruby slippers on, right? Our ruby slippers are a physical manifestation or a representative of that inner spark. And that inner spark is something that we need to value and treasure. All the experiences that we have in life are to support us on our spiritual journey, for us to figure out what's our divine purpose, who are we in truth, and how to be aligned with the Christ. And I'm just so impressed with some of the ruby slippers that I've seen today, right? So what are we going to do this Sunday? This Sunday we're going to continue this journey of Zen, and we're going to do that by following the yellow brick road. When we get here on planet Earth, you know what happens? We forget. We forget that we are spiritual energy. And this is what Green says about spiritual energy. The universe is composed of pure energy. On a subatomic level, you and everything around you are made up of energy. Your mind is in harmony with the infinite creative intelligence of the universe. This is the oneness of the cosmos. All right, well, that sounds interesting, but how does that feel in real life? Have you ever had a conversation with someone and you heard the words sounded good, but you realize they're not being really honest, they're not being sincere, there's just something off there. How do you know that? How do you know there's something off? You feel it in your gut. What else? What else? You'll see it in their actions, yes, right? We're told to look at the body language, right? Look at the eye movement, all of those. What are the fingers and hands doing? But it's deeper than that. It goes deeper than that because we can feel the energy. We can feel the dissonance. Through the lens of Taoism, that means that we can feel that there is an unbalanced energy, not in alignment with the universe, not in alignment with oneness. The Tao, the energy of the universe, calls our souls to come into alignment. And our soul recognizes that as we open to all that the universe is, that we step into infinite potential. Now, you may have heard this word being tossed around, right? In Unity, we use terms like law of mind action. What does that mean? It means that we are co-creating our lives with our thoughts held in mind, focused through our belief systems. It's where we realize how powerful we are simply because we are of God. Now let's dive into the story of the Wizard of Oz. You'll notice the yellow brick road seems to be this overarching theme, right, throughout the story. Well, why is that? Well, let's take a look at it and break it down a little bit. Glinda, the Good Witch, and the Munchkins, right, at the beginning of the journey of the yellow brick road, what do they say to Dorothy? Follow the yellow brick road, follow the yellow brick road. Follow, 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 follow the yellow brick road, right? I know you wanted me to continue singing. What do you think they're urging her to do? Why is it important to follow the yellow brick road? Because that's the spiritual journey, right? They're urging her, follow your divine spark. And in the spiritual journey, Green writes this: Dorothy follows the yellow brick road in search of something she never lost, her true self, notice with a capital S. All she really needs is the brains, the heart, and the courage to let go and trust her natural, spontaneous instincts. Notice the inference there. The scarecrow, brains, the tin man, heart, the cowardly lion, courage, all aspects of Dorothy. It's a call to integrate all aspects of the self, to trust her higher self, to trust the universe. And here's the thing, we don't have to force it. We don't have to force the evolution of consciousness. How often do we try to force things? Well, I've got to force myself to meditate, force myself to breathe, force myself to go to yoga class, force myself to read the latest spiritual books that somebody told me I should read because I'll reach enlightenment, right? We do all of that, but the truth is, spiritual enlightenment cannot be forced. Did you hear me? It cannot be forced. It's an unfolding that occurs as our consciousness evolves. So as we follow Dorothy on her journey of awakening, we can observe her commitment to following her divinity by following the yellow brick road. And all seems swell until what? There's a fork in the road. Which way do I go? Right? And in that moment, either if you're reading the book or if you're watching the movie, you can feel that level of anxiety, right? I mean, getting back home means getting to the wizard, means going down the right path. And from a spiritual level, you can then take that to, oh my gosh, if we don't do the right path, my soul could end in damnation. Been wanting to say that for a really long time. What about on your journey? Your journey. Ever feel like you got to make the right choice or you're doomed? Or worried about making the wrong choice so you're paralyzed and don't do anything? Or what about when you look back in the past and you look at some of the choices you made and go, oh my God, horrible choices? Well, here's a twist for you. Green says, choosing is absurd. It doesn't matter really which fork in the road Dorothy takes, as long as she follows the yellow brick road. So as long as she's on the spiritual journey, hear that, as long as you're on the spiritual journey, listening to spirit, all the roads lead to self-actualization. The decisions life throws in your path aren't always as important as they seem. What matters is that you make the choice, that you have the courage to move forward. I'm hoping that you can exhale from that, because that's a big one. We humans, we are just like, oh, got to make the right choice, got to make the right choice. We're terrified of making mistakes. But if we are on the spiritual journey, there are no mistakes. There are no mistakes. Amen. But then it kind of makes us wonder, what about the scarecrow? Why was he hanging on the pole? He was stuck there. And I thought, well, you know, he's probably filled with fear, feelings of unworthiness, because it was all about, if I only had a brain, right? If I only had a brain. So, like, not feeling smart enough, questioning, how could he move forward in life if he believed he didn't have what it took to succeed? Have you ever felt like that? I have. The Tao calls us forward to have the experiences, to make the mistakes, to enjoy the moments, to cry and feel like our hearts are broken, all while knowing it's all for our highest good. In Unity, we call this divine order. Sounds familiar? All of it, all that we experience, calls us to co-create, to discover our passions, and become our divine selves. So know that whatever steps that you took in the past brought you here to this moment, here for us to co-create. And know whatever steps you take in the future are acceptable, are going to be for your greatest good on the spiritual journey. And what's the other thing that we know about the spiritual journey? We're never alone. Look at all of us. We are never alone. And Dorothy wasn't alone either, right? Dorothy inspires the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion. And we inspire others on our journey simply by being our Christ presence. That's it. And we impact everyone around us, everyone then yearning for what's their higher purpose. So let's take a look at some of the people on Dorothy's walk, spiritual walk. So we look there, and as we look at the Scarecrow, right? That's the first person that she meets on the spiritual journey. And Green writes that the Scarecrow, nailed to the post, cannot go anywhere. And he's representing those people in life who let others hold them back from realizing their dreams and aspirations. What about the Tin Man? Rusted, right there, can't move, unable to move. The Tin Man represents a second group of soul searchers, those paralyzed by indecisiveness. And finally, well, maybe if I press the right button. Yeah, the Cowardly Lion, right? Cowardly Lion could have moved anywhere on the yellow brick road, couldn't he? There's nothing holding him there. But he represents a third group of individuals, those who lack the courage to make the spiritual journey alone. So Dorothy on the spiritual journey, represented by that yellow brick road, is attracting people along the way. And they're flowing in the same direction. They may not all have the same intent. They may not all have the same purpose, but they're all heading towards the Emerald City. They're all on the spiritual journey to know their truth. One of the things that we see developing between these characters is this sense of unconditional love, right? And that they're supporting each other on that journey. And in Unity, we call this the law of attraction, right? That as we are resonating in frequencies, things and people are coming in that resonate with us. Dorothy, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion they're becoming aware of oneness. They're realizing that if one succeeds, they all succeed. And if one perishes, they all perish. And so therefore, they are willing to risk much to help each other along the way. So we also know as metaphysicians that as we follow our divine calling, we step into the flow of the universe. And what happens? An unfolding happens. Right? An unfolding happens with ease and grace. Doors and miracles open up. Now, as lunatics, we may think that means comfort and joy all the time. No, that's the fantasy. The reality is that life happens along the way. And things that we may label as bad or not what we want are often things for our highest good. Remember the hot air balloon at the end where it takes off with the wizard and Dorothy is like devastated, right? Her way home is devastated. What did you think when you saw that? I could tell you my first thoughts. My first thoughts were, can the girl not get a break? Right? And then my second thought was, and now there's no hope of her dating life ever improving. Who's she gonna date? Right? But what you and I may have labeled a tragedy for Dorothy was what? A blessing. A blessing because she then realized her power, that she could get back home all on her own. What if we are able to look at the challenges in our lives that way, through the lens of divine order? Then we wouldn't be watching to see how big a blessing it could be for us. Could we do that as opposed to thinking, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster? What if we flip the script? What if that challenge is now the thing that allows us to figure out our power? I don't know about you, but I would now be looking like, what challenge is coming my way? What's going to happen? Ooh, what's the biggest blessing I can get out of this? All on a reframe. Green writes, your spiritual essence is pure consciousness. No, I'll try that again. Take two. Your spiritual essence is pure consciousness. The deeper you know your true self, the closer you align yourself with the pure potential and total oneness of the universe. Discover your radiant inner being and you will unleash pure potential of your spiritual essence. So this is the book that we've been using. And I just wanted to read this segment because I thought it was really powerful. Suppose, like the scarecrow, you're stuck in a job far beneath your level of intelligence. Ring a bell, anyone? All right. You're nailed to a pole in the middle of a cornfield. Your only responsibility is to scare crows. You're smart enough to handle the job, but your heart just isn't in it. Your enthusiasm for the job quickly wanes. Instead of inspiring you, the job becomes a humiliating reminder of failure. No matter how smart you really are, you subconsciously convince yourself that you can't be all that bright if you're stuck in a cornfield scaring crows. You start to denigrate yourself until you destroy your self-esteem. You convince yourself that you can't scare a crow because you don't have a brain. The truth is, you're just too smart for such a menial job. Your passion lies in greater intellectual pursuits. Deep down in your soul, you know you have to get off that pole, discover your true essence, and unleash your infinite potential. For someone who insists he doesn't have a brain, the scarecrow has been giving an awful lot of thought to what he would think about if he did have one. I'd think of things I never thunk before, and then I'd sit and think some more. As a conscious being, the only thing you need to find happiness is to perceive clearly who you are. Being upset about what you don't have wastes what you do have. The very fact that the scarecrow craves wisdom means he already has smarts. What he really yearns for is a higher consciousness, enlightenment, nirvana. When the scarecrow asks Dorothy if he can accompany her to the Emerald City to ask the wizard for some brains, Dorothy warns him against it. I've got a witch mad at me, explains Dorothy, and you might get in trouble. Witch? I'm not afraid of a witch, insists the scarecrow. I'm not afraid of anything, except matches. Yeah, a lighted match. But I'd face a whole box of them for the chance of getting some brains. You see why I wanted to read that to you, yes? In this scenario, the scarecrow is willing to risk his very existence in order to find a brain. But if we look at this from a deeper level, it's to realize that the scarecrow is challenging his limited knowledge of his physical existence to discover who he really is. He is determined to know his divine essence, his totality. The Tao Te Ching, as I mentioned before, is the sacred text of Taoism, and I thought this was pretty powerful. Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom. Mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power. Yeah. You see, when we know our true self, we harness the true potential of the universe. We get to be in the flow of accepting all that is for us. So we don't have to carry around fears, the fears of not knowing, the fears of what if, the fear of not enough. We can be in the space of this moment, knowing right now is exactly as it's supposed to be. And ours is to be the highest expression of that truth, as best as we can, while being in the knowing that the universe is supporting us for our highest good. And you know what the big piece of this is that I personally struggle with? Releasing outcomes. I don't know about you, but I have a hard time with that. Releasing outcomes. Because if we're truly on the spiritual path, then that means whatever happens on the journey is a manifestation of the universe in support of our evolution of consciousness. So, the characters in The Wizard of Oz are an outpicturing of Taoism and Zen Buddhism's highest call to be one with nature and one with the universe. You know, that scarecrow who thought he didn't have a brain came up with some really interesting, clever solutions. Do you remember the time that they were hungry and they got to the grove of the apple trees and they went to pick the apple trees and they smacked their hand and no matter what, they couldn't get these apples? What did the scarecrow decide to do? Let's insult them a little bit, provoke them, right? Next thing they knew, apples were whipping at them. They could have all the apples that they wanted, right? And whose idea, when it was time to try to sneak into the Wicked Witch's castle, figured out if we dressed up like the Winkies, you know, we could easily sneak in. The scarecrow, again. You see, when we are in the moment of the universe and no longer pining for what we think we need, we just become magnificent, right? All right, so I'm inviting you to relook or reread The Wizard of Oz and kind of look at all the layers that we've been talking about the last couple of weeks. We've got one more week. We're going to do The Wizard of Oz for one more week because I think this is a rich spiritual mine that we get to kind of plumb. And I look forward to seeing you next week and figuring out, like, how are you embodying your magnificence? Let's get ready for prayer.